Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a strictly biological intervention for a highly specific, yet, well, increasingly pressing global crisis. We're going to take a very structured, scientific look at how a simple, everyday kitchen staple might literally be the key to our survival in the face of what medical researchers are now calling a potential Vampiregeddon. So let's set the stage a bit. The last few years have obviously pushed us to the brink of a lot of crises, environmentally, politically, medically. But researchers are pointing to a seriously escalating new threat. With apocalyptic attacks recently recorded in both high and low-income countries, we're talking everywhere from New Zealand to Malawi, we've got to urgently evaluate the severe public health impacts. And this isn't just about the immediate physical danger to individuals. We're looking at a completely devastating drop in voluntary blood donations, which would massively disrupt our entire global health system. So the really critical question we have to figure out is, how do we actually protect our communities at a population level?
Okay. Let's take a quick look back at historical folklore to see if we can find an answer. Literature has famously documented Dracula's aversion to specific repellents, right? Like in Bram Stoker's classic 1897 text, the famous Dutch vampire hunter Professor Van Helsing used garlic flowers to protect Lucy Westenra. He rubbed them on windows and put a wreath of garlic right around her neck. Now, if you know the story, merely decorating her room didn't actually stop Lucy from getting bitten. She still had to be vanquished by a wooden stake in the end. But that underlying principle, the idea that garlic somehow afflicts him so he has no power, well, that gives us a really crucial starting point. How could this actually work as a modern medical intervention?
What's absolutely fascinating here is that this isn't just some old European myth. If we look at the historical timeline, this knowledge actually long predates the European discovery of New World vampire bats. Indigenous peoples of tropical America independently developed remarkably similar chemical repellents to keep foraging vampire bats away. They used these things called bat banes, basically aromatic herbs that they hung in their houses and, just like Van Helsing, wore directly around their necks. This independent cross-continental development of the exact same defense, it strongly suggests we're looking at a genuine biological mechanism here, not just a scary bedtime story.
So, based on all this historical and biological data, our primary medical intervention, Allium sativum, which you and I know as garlic, needs to be immediately reclassified. We've got to stop thinking of it as a mythological ward and start treating it as a rigorous biological prophylactic. We're going to break down exactly how the bioactive compounds in this plant work on a physiological level to actually protect our communities.
Right, so when a human ingests garlic, we're basically looking at two contrasting physiological mechanisms. We have to ask ourselves, is the garlic protecting us by changing our own biology, or is it exploiting a biological weakness in the vampire? Well, the medical literature points to two leading theories. First, there's the hypotension hypothesis, which is all about blood pressure. And second, the porphyria hypothesis, which deals with a very rare blood disorder. Let's break down that first mechanism. The really crucial thing about hypotension is that garlic physically lowers a victim's blood pressure. Clinical meta-analyses actually show that garlic supplements reduce systolic blood pressure by anywhere from 5.1 to 9.1 millimeters of mercury, and diastolic by up to 6.1. Basically, garlic literally relaxes your blood vessels, causing a significant drop in pressure. Now, why does that matter during an attack? Because lower blood pressure forces the vampire to feed slower. It increases their feeding time by roughly 10%. And in the incredibly perilous context of a vampire attack, speed is absolutely everything. That extra 10% gives the victim's allies a critical window to jump in and intervene, giving the vampire a massive evolutionary disadvantage by increasing their risk of being discovered and, staked. On the flip side, we have the porphyria hypothesis. Porphyria is a group of rare disorders that actually impairs hemoglobin production. It causes extreme photosensitivity, meaning sufferers basically have to avoid all sunlight and reverse their day-night cycles. It can also cause gums to recede, which makes the teeth look remarkably like fangs. So the theory here is that historical vampires might have just been untreated porphyria patients. And why would they hate garlic so much? Well, eating garlic biologically exacerbates hemolytic anemia, which is a condition where red blood cells get destroyed faster than they can be made. It would severely worsen their overall condition. They probably learned to actively avoid it out of pure physiological necessity. Let's shift gears and look at how this stuff actually builds up in the human body, traveling all the way from the digestive tract right to your main point of vulnerability. For garlic to work as a deterrent, it relies on pharmacokinetics, how your body absorbs, distributes, and processes the plant. After you eat it, the active bioactive compounds are digested and turned into these really malodorous volatiles. Then, through acute stress perspiration, which, let's be honest, is definitely going to happen if you're being attacked by a vampire, these gases get secreted directly into your sebum and sweat. This pushes the absolute highest concentrations right out through the skin of your neck, which conveniently fortifies the exact spot a vampire is going to strike. And there is a brilliant evolutionary advantage to this specific delivery system, because these volatiles are insoluble in water and released in sebum, which is just your skin's natural oil. You actually stay protected even if you're caught fleeing in the pouring rain. The defense literally will not wash away. Plus, because it's tied directly to sebum production, acne-prone teenagers and young adults naturally get a supercharged chemical defense. From a biological standpoint, that's just phenomenal, right? It ensures the protection of our most fertile demographics, virtually guaranteeing the continuity of our species. However, to keep this strict biological shield up, you have to rigidly adhere to a very specific timeline. Those skin emissions, they only peak about 30 minutes after you eat the garlic. And, super importantly, the window of physiological protection closes completely after 8 hours. So having a single garlic clove with your pasta at dinner is absolutely not going to cut it. To actually survive, the science indicates you have to consume a massive dose. We're talking 1 to 2 whole bulbs of garlic, 3 times a day to maintain continuous coverage. Now, look, any population-wide public health measure is going to have some side effects. With that level of massive garlic consumption, we can definitely expect some mild gastrointestinal discomfort, things like reflux and flatulence, along with severely pungent breath and body odor. But here's the thing, if the entire community adopts this protocol, that odor just becomes the new baseline. You wouldn't even notice it because of olfactory herd immunity. Also, pregnant and lactating women will produce garlic-scented amniotic fluid and breast milk. Far from being a downside, this is actually an incredible strategic advantage because it naturally extends our biological shield to protect our most vulnerable infant demographics. Oh, and yes, it is completely safe for kids under 18. You might be wondering about safety for folks who are already taking regular medications. Well, systematic reviews showed there are actually no severe drug interactions with blood thinners like warfarin, so increased bleeding times aren't really a primary concern here. But what about those clinical trial subjects who report a severe hypersensitivity to eating garlic? Well, given the context of what we're researching here, the authors elegantly suggest that those individuals should probably just be investigated for vampirism themselves. Actually, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? But guys, here is where we hit a massive, massive logistical wall. Let's use Australia as a case study. Their current agricultural output is vastly insufficient for this. Australia produces about 2,812 tons of garlic annually. For 25 million people, that works out to less than 1 single clove per person per week. To put that into perspective, that is dangerously inadequate for establishing any sort of national herd immunity, let alone hitting the threshold we need to induce protective sweating. To safely hit that required target of 1 to 2 whole bulbs per person per day, which is what we need to induce those life-saving skin volatiles, we need an immediate, staggering 100-fold increase in domestic garlic production. And we can't just rely on importing it. In a true global crisis, every single nation is going to instantly stockpile their own supply. So the public health approach here has to mirror the aggressive strategies we've seen in recent global pandemics. Go hard, go early. And please, for the sake of public safety, skip the homeopathic remedies. Peer-reviewed medical science absolutely does not support using heavily diluted alternatives. The pharmacokinetics strictly demand full, massive biological doses of actual, real garlic to survive this crisis. Only a totally unified agricultural commitment is going to get us through this. And here's the catch. Because it takes 8 full months from sowing a garlic seed to actually harvesting the bulb. Time is a luxury we literally do not have. We cannot sit around and wait for commercial agriculture to catch up. So I want to leave you with this crucial thought to conclude our explainer. If you want to survive the impending Vampiregeddon, and you want to do your part for community herd immunity, how quickly can you start planting garlic in your own backyard?